Hi, everyone, and welcome to Talk with Olena podcast. And today I have a super special guest. Today with me, I have Peter Veress. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure, Olena, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. And we're going to talk all about corporate immigration. And hopefully some RCACs and immigration lawyers will get to learn from you and from your business and how you establish such a just significant business presence in this specific sector. I was just digging through some articles about you online, and it's pretty impressive how long you've been around. 23 years.
Actually, 35.
Wow. So tell me
years,
a little bit about your journey, so those who don't know you know a bit more about you.
You betcha. Yes. Thank you, Elena. And my journey. My journey started after I finished my political science degree from the University of Calgary, and I wanted to get into the foreign service. That was my goal. That was my focus. And so I wrote the foreign service entrance exam. I went to the interviews. I did my enhanced security checks, all that stuff. And then the government went into a sort of a hiring freeze exactly at the time that I was applying. So I didn't hear back from them for years. And so in the interim, I thought, well, I have to do something. And I joined the Department of Immigration, at the time CIC. And I just fell in love with the work, with the direct contact with the people, and on the one hand, I was kind of, sort of fantasizing about doing this glamorous globetrotting and solving all sorts of international conflicts and things in foreign service. But at the end, I realized that that's not what an entry-level position is at the Foreign Service. So I really sort of, I really felt, like I said, I fell in love with the work and the contact and the direct sort of, interaction with clients and the ability to work and to work in that environment, that international window into the world was very, very enticing.
Yeah, that's great. So when did you transition from the government job to establishing your own company?
Yeah, that dates me. I started with the company in 1989. So it feels like 1889, but 1989.
I was not, just for the perspective, I was not born yet. Okay.
Shut up. I don't want to hear that. Yeah, no. Yeah, you're right. Most people weren't. So most RCICs weren't at the time. So yeah, and then I left the department in mid 90s, and it was really interesting, Olena. But the reason why we left the department and went into private practice is because we felt that the department was getting out of the sort of service providing aspect of their delivery, and we thought there was a vacuum. That like lawyers were doing a lot of very complex immigration work, but nobody was really helping individuals and companies with the complexities of doing immigration work. And at the time when I was an immigration officer, we actually did that work. We were called immigration counselors. We weren't even called officers. So people would come to us and stand in front of our booth and then ask us, how do I bring my sister from Argentina or from wherever? And we would say, okay, well, this is the forms that you need. Boom, 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 boom. And we gave them the forms and we gave them all the instructions. And then when that became kind of impracticable, because of just the sheer volume of people that wanted that information, we thought, you know what, we could do this. And I do believe, and I've said this before, and I apologize for those of you who've heard this before, but I think we are the privatization of the service delivery arm of the department.
Yep. That's very interesting. I actually never heard about this before. I know from just stories that CAC officers, it used to be like even here in Etobicoke in Toronto, it used to be, there is a department, but you used to be able to just walk in there like Service Canada, right? Yeah. But it's very interesting what you mentioned, that it's almost like you used to be an immigration consultant, but on the government side, and then you went private. Yes.
Yeah, and so the complexity in that is that all of a sudden we kind of got into a bit of a conflict of interest, because we were dispensing the information and advice, and then we were adjudicating on the advice that we were giving.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that became problematic, and the lawyers kind of started to get a little worried about, the government lawyers worried about that particular aspect of it. And then they said, you know what, that's it, boom, done. We're no longer doing that. And we thought, what a good opportunity, and we left, and much to the chagrin of our spouses, who thought we just lost our minds from living a real secure, job, with pension and all sorts of other things and other benefits. But we have not looked back, and it's been a really, like you said, a good journey and a super, super exciting ride.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your business. I know that you specialize in corporate immigration. Like, even when you go on Vermax's website, it's very clear that you're serving companies, you're serving more corporate side of things. So tell me a little bit more in details how that looks like, what type of files you handle, what kind of work you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vermax basically has three areas of focus, practice focus. One is corporate immigration, and we'll get into that in a second. The other one is labor immigration, which is kind of corporate, but it's sort of a subset of corporate. And then business immigration, which right now is a little bit, slim pickings. Because the program, the business immigration program, is under a lot of stress and strain and retraction, and we do have a division that does general immigration, but really that division really serves the other two or the other three. We don't particularly market to that segment. There's a lot of people doing that in that area, in that space. So we use it only as a way to support the corporate and labor and business immigration, areas of our practice. So we are a B2B company. We're a business to business company. It's a decision that we made early back in 2004. And we really sat down and said, okay, where do we want to focus our energies? What would be, an area that we would be interested in, be challenging, and where there is, where the services are needed, where the service and it's a lucrative area of practice. And we landed on corporate immigration and labor. And then what we did is on the labor side, we also created a fairly robust international recruitment division. So with labor, and that's why labor and corporate is a little bit separate. So what we did is we said, not only, yes, we can assist you with your workforce, international workforce needs, but we can actually find the skill and the labor that is required to complement the workforce so that they can complete the projects that they're on. And then we actually went out and we said, okay, so what sector even? We started to really narrow down our service offerings to say, what sector do we want to be in? And we set out a set of objectives as to what sectors we wanted to be in that would serve our interest best. And so we did land on and settle on infrastructure, heavy civil construction infrastructure sector, and that helped both the corporate side and the labor side, because at that point we were going to them and saying, if you need skill sets that are not readily available in Canada, we can actually procure that for you, and that has worked out really, really well. So to answer your question, Olena, and I don't want to sort of monopolize this because I really want this to be more interactive, but I think corporate immigration, I was kind of struggling to find a definition that we could all kind of agree on, so that this conversation, it has a little, it's got more of a structure to it. And corporate immigration is really, I think, any case that is initiated by a corporation, by a business, by an employer, where they phone you and they say, this is my problem, but it's initiated by the corporation, and that's what's corporate, right? So, for example, we do a lot of work in the energy sector. So you'll have an oil and gas company calling us and saying, look, we need to bring 3 reservoir engineers from the United States, and these are the guys and men and women, and we just basically do the paperwork, making sure that we secure their entry and their work permit so that they're permitted to do what they need to be doing here in Canada. So that's sort of the corporate sort of side of things. But corporate in and of itself is typically, I guess, it's more reserved to the sort of the 0, 1, 2, and 3s on the tier system,
Yeah.
So you're looking at executives, senior managers, professionals, and technical people in trades and so on. And so that's sort of the corporate kind of world, if you will, if you, and it's not perfect because there is an overlap.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where you are. And then the 4, 5 really is the tiers 4 and 5 fall more into the sort of the labor immigration side of things. I call the 4, 5s the backbone and the front door of or the front gate of the labor market here in Canada. So those are two separate ones, and I hope I'm not confusing anybody by the differentiation between corporate, where you're dealing mostly with international mobility programs. You're not doing the sort of the labor market test. You're using all sorts of other programs that are available, and they're robust. And one of the few sides of immigration that does work. You look at the ICTs, the intercompany transferees. You look at reciprocal agreements. You look at trade agreements with which we have many of them, and they're all kind of similar, but they have a little bit of a different tweak on each one, and each one of these free trade agreements has an immigration provision in it. Most of them do. And so if you know how to just kind of zero in on those and make the best of it, and then you have the francophone program, and there's all sorts of programs that are available. And it's fascinating because corporate types, corporate Canada doesn't know about all the other options. Everybody goes to the temporary foreign worker sort of, solution, which is the LMIA. You put advertise, bam, bam, bam. But when you sit down with corporate, with the C-suite in the corporate side of things, and you start talking about this, it becomes really interesting because all of a sudden there's a world of opportunity that opens up, and literally a world of opportunity to bring talent and skill sets from around the world, and the mobility, and that's how it was designed, is to make that mobility more available to companies in Canada who want to grow and want to create some more economic activities in Canada. So it's fascinating because when you if you work in the corporate side of things, you're not just a consultant. You are you partner in with the company. You're a strategist, and that becomes so much more than simply doing another free trade agreement. Like another CUSMA professional. You do, and what happens then is that you go from being a consultant to the consultant. They seek you out because you become so good at what you're doing, So it's almost an ecosystem in itself when you start to work in the corporate side of things.
It's 100% ecosystem on itself. So just to reiterate, because to me, it's always super fascinating to learn about how other people build their businesses and how they structure things. So just to reiterate, so you have corporate immigration, which is generally is international mobility programs, free trade agreements, all that LMIA exempt for NOC 0, 1 to 3, where corporations seek your assistance. Then you have labor side of things. So labor department, that would be mostly tier 4, 5, and that would be LMIA, temporary foreign worker kind of stuff. Yeah. And then you have general immigration department that just serves those two departments. So for example, I assume, if the worker who did LMIA with your firm, the company who did LMIA with your firm, there is a worker. And if further down they need permanent residence application, then your general department. And that is a very common structure, really. And what I realized actually just recently, that if you think about all immigration departments, they either fall into business model that you kind of have, like the variations of that business model, right? When you essentially, your main point of business, how you get business, is the contact with corporations, with companies, with, the government in some cases, right? And then everything else that kind of trickles down to your general immigration department. And then the other kind of model, business model, is something that, like, I would be a good example, right? Because it's a purely B2C, when you just go out in the world and you seek out people who want to apply or have good chances apply for express entry, for provincial nominee program, for, any those kind of spousal sponsorship, citizenship, those sorts of things. And I think it's almost like two different completely models of business in a sense of like how you would run those. Because for us, when we do B2C, because you are seeking out customers, like literally individuals that are going to be applicants, it's really important to have the online presence, social media, all that kind of stuff, right? Because it's essentially what we're doing is a retail, right? That's why you have to go. Yes, that's why you have to go to masses. Now, companies like yours, you don't need all of that marketing, so to speak, presence, because your marketing looks completely different. Your marketing is on the relationship side of things, on building those relationships with government, with corporate world, seeking out like LinkedIn, right? Like seeking out those relationships. And I feel like it's really useful for immigration consultants who are listening to this to understand that these two business models are very different, and how you would approach the strategy when you're building that business will be very different in all different levels, starting with marketing and ending with how you build your team, right? And what your team needs to be. Because I feel like companies like yours, they tend to more grow in a width because you're dealing with a higher volume of workers. Therefore, you have higher volume of applications to process. You need more staff to handle those, right? When companies like mine, because we're like a little bit differently structured, it's not volume is not always the path that we're choosing to do it. When we may choose to go more into higher prices, a higher quality, lower volume, that's our choice kind of. So it's very different, because I want my team to be small. I don't feel like I have a patience or desire really to deal with all the stress that comes with running a big practice. So yeah, that's very different to think about like specifically structure. So tell me, you said that just you made that decision to build that business based on that structure early on. I think you mentioned 2004. Now, with that decision, do you feel like you ever felt like you want to switch the gears, or you just always wanted to build more of a corporate immigration?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's a good question. So I think just to sort of just go back a little bit on what you said, even though corporate immigration and B2B is different than B2C, there is an overlap, and so there's quite a big overlap, because even though you have to be fastidiously competent in that area of the corporate side of things, and you also have to have a very a good understanding, or at least an interest in business in general, like outside of immigration, how business works, how do mergers and acquisitions work, how do structures, the SVPs, how do they all come together, because that's what you're going to be faced with a lot of the time. But at the end of the day, you also have to be very competent on general immigration, because when you walk into that boardroom, they may just throw a question at you and say, oh, by the way, our CEO also, or the CEO that we're planning to bring to Canada, she also has a bit of a criminal dent in her record, and how do we deal with that? And so you do have to be you have to showcase knowledge about immigration in general. So it's not about just one or the other. You have to be both on when you're doing that type of service, because much like you were mentioning the marketing side of things, you're absolutely right. We do not have to have that, this like, we are not retail, so we don't have to have a wide, sort of reach out to people around the world. What we need to do is to be in front of organizations and associations and trade associations and I have a saying that says you either appear or disappear.
Yeah.
In the corporate
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. So if you, for example, you belong to an association and you miss a couple of meetings, you know what, you kind of get forgotten pretty quickly, but you have to be out there in the golf courses. You have to be out there in the, in luncheons and conferences and seminars, and you've got to be presenting. And it's all fun. I mean, when I say gut, I think I should use the word you get to, as opposed to you have to, you get to do all that stuff. And if it's exciting, then yeah. So to answer your question, did I set out to do that from the beginning? Yeah, I did. I'll give you a little anecdote. That was really cool. So back in a few years ago, in 2004, the temporary foreign worker program really was before 2002, 3. The temporary foreign worker was really two areas. There was the temporary the living caregivers, and there was some very highly specialized people, and that was it. And then one day, we were working with some oil and gas companies. I got called up to Fort McMurray, and Fort McMurray, as you know, is the epicenter of the oil and gas industry in Canada. And they went into the boardroom, and there was a consortium of companies who were saying, you know what, we're building out some major projects, and we're going to be needing people from outside because we simply do not have the trades that we need right now. And I said, yeah, okay, sure, no problem. And they said, so what kind of numbers are we looking at? And I kid you not, they said, well, we need 12,000 temporary foreign workers for this project, another 8,000 for that project. And I honestly thought these guys were on drugs. I tried to kind of hide my shock, because I went, yeah, we can do that. No, we can't. But it was really interesting, and that to me was a sign that this was a thing that's going to become a thing. And in fact, we went out, and I went back to my partner, and I told him this, and my partner said, you know what, no, this is just a boom, it's happening, it's not going to be a big deal. And I said, no, this is a thing, and here's my shares. I want to sell my shares to you. I'm doing this on my own. I'll go. And we parted in very good terms, and it was really, as we still to this day, we're very good friends. But yeah, I have not looked back from that decision. When I came back from that life-changing moment, and I went, okay, this is a thing. This is happening, And I tell you, I love it. I'm going to leave you guys with something super interesting. I think the North, mark my words, guys, the North is the next frontier. And by North, I mean northern side of provinces, but for the most part, territories, Arctic. That's where the future is for us, because there is going to be a lot of work that's going to come out of there. The billions and billions of dollars that are projected to be invested in those areas are massive. And to me, the government can talk all they want, but you follow the money from the private investors. Where is that money going? And the money is going north. Because if the Northwest Passage opens up year-round, it's going to make the Panama Canal obsolete. Mark my words. So if you position now, and you position well, and you start kind of looking at those opportunities that are coming up, you're going to retire well in this field.
That is a very good tip. So for somebody who is listening right now and saying, okay, Peter, I'll take you up on that suggestion. Where do you start? How do you start building those connections, exposure, getting in front of right people?
And that's a really good question. And I knew that was coming. So the way you do it is, I think what you have to do, first of all, you have to determine that this is something that you want to do. It's not for everyone. And it's not for the faint of heart, because the risk associated with working with corporate immigration is a little higher, I think, than your average, working B2C. And the reason why is because there is millions of dollars. There's capital at risk. So those guys don't come in and the project is delayed. And we're talking, in some cases, millions of dollars in both penalties, in financial penalties and administrative penalties for those companies who can't finish the project in time, because somehow you had something to do with the fact that they didn't come in time. So you have to really, really sort of have that guttural sort of digestive force that that allows.
And I have to say, sorry to interrupt you, but I have to say that was a reason that I had a similar opportunity maybe 8 years ago that you're describing, and I started getting into it, and within 1 year, I understood that I just don't want to handle that stress. Like I just don't feel like I'm cut out for this, just purely from a mental health point of view.
Absolutely.
I just felt like I just can't, like I can do the job 100%, but
Absolutely.
this is not a lifestyle that I want to have, because as you said, it is, the numbers are big. The numbers are big. And
Yeah.
I literally sat down and I was like, that's it, I'm backing out. And I backed out. I had several like pretty significant corporate accounts, and I just backed out and I said, like, no, B2C is my road here, because I just can't do it. And I think it's important, to
so it's not for everyone, but if you manage it right, and you have already a certain affinity towards business, and this is important. That's the second point, is that you have to like business. You have to like that environment, and if you have that corporate inclination, then you're going to do well. If you don't, stay away. That's not your gig, and that's okay. And it's not everybody's gig. So that's the second thing. The third thing that you have to sort of look at is to say, okay, what's my background? Like what is, the RCIC's background? It's fascinating because, as you know, RCICs, that in Canada, I mean, a lot of them, this is the second and third career or second career anyway. So they already come with some sort of knowledge base. So for example, we have a lot of engineers who are RCICs. We have a lot of medically trained people that are RCICs. We have a lot of, educators who are, and so what you want to do is you want to sort of kind of leverage that you have with what you're going to sell, because it makes a difference. If you're an engineer and let's say a civil engineer, you go to the construction company and you say, look, it's a much easier conversation. Even if you're a foreign trained engineer, you have a much better understanding, a much better conversation than if you don't have a clue what that particular type of engineer does in that context. And I've been in the situation where I've been in boardrooms where the corporate guys knew in seconds that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And you don't want to be there. You do not want to be there. So I learned that, there is a certain, if you can leverage your background to what you're doing. So for example, when I'm talking about, corporate, choose a field that you're interested in and you have a little bit of knowledge about. If you're medically trained back home, you come here, you know what, there's no shortage of need in the healthcare sector. Go into the healthcare sector. And the beauty with both the healthcare sector and the construction sector is that a lot of their projects are publicly funded. Yep. So it's almost anti-cyclical in the ups and downs of the business, in the business cycles. So what happens is, for example, in construction, whenever there's a downturn in the economy, like there's kind of a little bit of it now, we're getting a taste of it right now, the government gets involved and invests in a make work project. And so the funding is it's not completely recession proof, because there's no recession proof business, but this one is a little bit easier because there is that public funding, and both in the healthcare sector and right now, for example, you even realize that the healthcare sector and, for example, and I'm just using examples, the construction sector are exempt from some of the refusal to process policies of the LMIA. Why? Because there are priority sectors, and they employ a lot of people. So again, sit down. If you're going to get into this field, sit down and look at what it is that you want. And this is what we did. We said, okay, we want an industry, a sector that has money. Let's start with that, because they can afford our services. 2, they have a need. Yes, they have a need. We looked at the labor market information and said, what area, what sector is going to be really hit hard by the lack of skills and labor supply from within Canada. We looked at seasonality. Can we do the repeat business? In construction, you can. If you're working on roads and bridges, you're only working in summer, or at least from April to September. So we said, and that's repeat business, because every year you bring back the same guys, right? So you have a cash flow sort of situation where that you can manage. And finally, one that we feel that would be a priority, a government priority, so that it would be somewhat buffered from, the wild swings of the ups and downs of the economy. And so you don't have to follow that. What I'm saying is that have your checklist and then go into a sector. If you go into a sector, it is much better because then again, you become the specialist of that sector. And these guys all, they all have lunch together. They all play golf together. They all talk, which is good and bad. Because if you're good, they're going to be doing your marketing. If you're bad, if you have a misfire somewhere along the line, everybody will know you had a misfire. So it's back to that, sort of that guttural fortitude that you have to have in order to be in the B2B sort of side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think earlier this year I learned this advice from somebody else, another RCAC, that when you are trying to develop corporate immigration, focusing on a specific sector is the key. Also, because if you don't have background in that, then at least you will learn on the job, like those professions, those specific specific, positions within the firm and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really good. Thank you so much.
And the one sector kind of flows into another. Like, for example, we do mining, construction, transportation, and they're all kind of interrelated. So it's not that you have to be just the one, because that's risky as well. But if you're in that area of infrastructure, construction, mining, resources, energy, then you are in that ball of wax, and it works well.
So imagine you absolutely have zero, you don't know anyone, you don't have business, absolute zero. What would be the first thing that you do to get your first corporate account in the sector that you chose?
Yes, and that's a good question. So, we're going to assume that they went through that analysis that we talked about, and their character and their personality fits this model and all that stuff, and they really have a desire to work on corporate immigration. I would once I would determine as to which sector I want to work in, join an organization in that sector. Simple as that. For example, if you're in Saskatchewan and you are, want to work in the mining sector, then join the Saskatchewan Mining Association, and they'll take anybody. It costs money. It costs anywhere. An average seat on an association is now like a registration, and membership registration is about, $1,500 to $1,000. But it will be the best money you'll ever spend, because at that time and just listen to what you don't go in there trying to sell anything. Just listen, educate yourself, and show up all the time. And before you know it, they'll come to you and say, what is it that you do again? Because you've been here for a long time. And so you want to be careful not to come across as a salesperson there, because those memberships, those organizations don't like people pushing their wares. But eventually, if you can become a subject matter expert on international mobility, and you just give that advice for free at the time, you become the in guy or woman, right? You become, and then if you can at some point, volunteer to join a committee in their association, or join the board even. Now you're in the inner sanctum, and that makes all the difference, because now you're approaching a lot of people at once. There are other ways of doing this. One of the more successful campaigns that we had was talking to consular representatives. For example, every city has either honorary consuls or has the actual diplomatic appointed guys, men and women. And so give seminars, go and sit down, and they meet. All the consular people meet once every 6 months or whatever. Get yourself in there as a subject matter expert on international mobility. Why? Because those are the guys, as soon as somebody wants to come to Canada, they will contact the consular embassy or consular staff here of their country and say, look, I want to come to Canada, and there's nothing more than the consul would love to do is to say, I got a guy that knows a woman that knows a guy. And you want to be that person somewhere along that chain of contact. So those are the way. And again, this is something that you have to like. You have to like, the cocktail parties and the late, Saturday night parties, and you gotta be in their face. Again, appear or disappear. So this is much more and on the one hand, corporate immigration is fun and it's good because it's quick and it's transactional, but it's also relational. Because what happens is that you have one client that actually keeps feeding you clients. And
Exactly.
that's beautiful. Like we're talking about the city of Calgary, right? We represent the city of Calgary on immigration matters. Well, to be honest, they don't give us a lot of work, but the fact that we can say that we are their representatives, that already gives us some social mileage. But they do every now and if there is there was a time during the boom where it was a fairly significant account, right? So now you have one point person who's just feeding you that that work, and that is actually really nice because you don't have to be. So once you establish yourself, you don't have to do a lot of that crazy stuff that I was talking about because they're already kind of seeking you out. They kind of heard of you and they're coming to get you. But you do, and you have to like that stuff because if you don't, you're going to die a horrible death.
And that leads me to my next question, because I love talking to people who are like so deeply passionate about work, and you clearly are. But it's been so many years. Like, what do you think really drives your passion? Like, is it passion for immigration law, or is it passion for like corporate, like world and all that kind of like work that you do and all those cocktail parties? Like, what do you feel kept you going for this long?
Yeah, it's both. I think I like the minutia. I like the regs. I like the policy operational side of immigration, and I like to see how we can put that together and make it work. And it's so refreshing when you see all these people coming in from other parts of the world. But let me conclude on this. It's interesting because a lot of immigration consultants, or at least RCICs, when they start their career, and I've taught a program I taught practice management for many, many years. And I've always asked, so what makes you want to, join this profession? And invariably I would hear that they just want to help people. And so, and that's okay. And that's cool. That's okay. And then when they start talking about corporate immigration and they see a disconnect between helping people and helping corporations. But at the end, there is a huge overlap there because you're bringing people and you're expanding their career opportunities and you're doing all sorts of things, if not for the corporation, but the people that the corporation is actually bringing in. And at the end of the day, you are contributing to the economy, you're contributing to a lot of things. So that kind of keeps me engaged. I'll conclude with one more specific way of actually answering your question. And that is, I think that in any career, that career has to meet, about 6 different needs, if you will. And I've talked about this in another podcast with KPIC once, and I'll repeat it because it's worth repeating, I think. And I apologize for those of you who've heard this before, but I really believe that immigration, all aspects of immigration, there is certainty. Yes, you can say right now, well, no, things are tough. No, I've been through this, so like in 35 years, I've seen so many of these that this is just a hiccup. It really is. We are all going to retire on immigration. So there's a lot of certainty on if you want to do this and you want to do it right, don't despair. Despair is not an option. Okay. It's not a strategy. So so certainty is important. But the other thing is variety. Because if you have too much certainty, you just kind of you get bored and you just, you want to drop everything because, you get to a point where you say, if I do one or more of this type of applications, I'll kill myself. Well, that's kind of dramatic, but variety. So there's no 2 cases are the same. No 2, and we know that, right? So focus on that. And then there is this connection that we have. I mean, we're all relational people. That's why we're in the business that we're in. And so you have to connect to this. And when you feel that you're disconnecting from it, try to reconnect and remember why you wanted to do what you wanted to do. The last 3 are, and this is really, really, really important. What we do is meaningful. It has significance. We make a difference. We're not making chairs. We're not making widgets. It matters whether we get up in the morning and we do a good job or not. People, benefit and prosper if we do our job well. And that is really, really almost intoxicating in terms of, the good fortune that we get to do that. The last 2 is growth. You're either growing or dying. And so this gives us an opportunity. This profession gives us this opportunity of just growing all the time, and always take inventory. What do I know now that I didn't know last year? It's like, oh crap, I did a lot of really cool things. And finally, contribution. What other profession allows you to do the contribution that we pay, not only to our clients, but to our association, to our profession, like you do, Olena, with your great outreach, and invariably to the country, right? Yeah. So what other profession gives you an opportunity to contribute to the landscape of this country that we all love? And that's what keeps me getting up in the morning.
I love that. Very inspirational. Very inspirational. Where you were 2 years ago when I was going through my burnout from immigration practice.
Yeah. And we all go through. And I don't want you to think that, I'm this maniac that gets up in the morning. I just think that I get those. I have good days and bad days like everybody else. It's just remembering how grateful we are that we don't. It's not that we have to do this, that we get to do this, and try to focus on that possibility and talk to others. And this is where MC3 comes in. If you have a really good opportunity and you want to explore this option, don't do it on your own. You owe it to the client to get it right, not only ethically, but legally, and you're compelled by regulation to get it right. So you have to be really, really careful how you do this. And so MC3, if I may just kind of plug that in a little bit.
So tell me, this is, sorry to interrupt you, but this is a fairly new project that you have established along with Phil Mooney, Hamid, and tell me a little bit about how it works, because honestly, I love the project, but I do feel like there are not a lot of RCICs out there that truly understand how it works and how beneficial it can be for them, whether they want to get into corporate immigration, international mobility programs, all that kind of stuff. And they just don't know. They're like, okay, I would be happy to do corporate immigration, but I need to learn so much about like the actual IMPs, right? Like how they can use your new project and your setup that you figured out for RCICs.
Absolutely. So IMMC3, the C3 stands for co-counsel collaboration. That's what we set this up to be. It's not a huge money-making business, but it's actually much like yourself, Olena. It is to the benefit of the profession. And what it is basically saying you don't have to be a junior counsel to be a member to sign up with IMMC3. You could be a very seasoned RCIC, but have an opportunity that you are not comfortable doing because you have not done that particular type of work. An HNC, a refugee claim, well, those are refugee claims that you have to be IRB as well. But let's say, a business immigration program or like you're saying, an ICT, a complicated reciprocal agreement program or whatever. And so what happens then is that you have a client, this is critical. You already have the client, and now you're saying, okay, now I really need to, really sort of get this right. So then you register with IMMC3, and IMMC3 will actually pair you with a person that has a lot of experience in that field, and that specific field. This would be the co-counsel person, typically a person. The guys that we have on the roster are very experienced, typically 10 years plus, and really specialize in that area that this particular client needs, right? So then what we've done is we've taken all the sort of the messy work of how this works. We have a really good set of resources that are available both to co-counsel and to counsel, so that the interaction is more seamless to the client. Even though on your service agreement, you're both the co-counsel and counsel is actually mentioned on the service agreement as per the CICC rules. What we've done is we've taken all that messiness of, okay, how is it that we're going to work and who does what and whose responsibility is what, all that stuff is already taken care of. And again, there's huge resources available that for both co-counsel and counsel to look at and say, oh, there's templates and we can move this case along a lot quicker. And there is a small a nominal fee that you pay to IMMC3 just so that we can maintain the whole thing and have the website. You can think of IMCC3 as a sort of a dating app. It's you're looking for somebody that can help you to do something, and we make it happen. And so far, it's been a good experience. We've had some really nice uptake on it. Business, obviously, it works. And again, both Phil, Mohammed, and I are not going to get rich on this. This is not one of those. It was never meant to be. It is just simply to help everybody to do their, to get it right. And again, we owe it to the client to get it right. We have to, and so and it opens opportunities, because just rather than saying, well, I'm just going to refer this out to somebody else, you say, okay, what if I do this? And it's not a mentorship program. And this is important to remember. We're not a mentorship, sort of platform. What we are is a co-counsel platform on a client that you already have. Not that you're going to get into this field, but you already have them. And then you can come in, and then what happens is, and we made it so that everything in the trust, the trust issues, the service, the client account issues are taken care of, and it's all cleared by CICC. So there's no weirdness and commission problems that they're going to come up, and it's very clear. And that's, I think it's been beneficial to some and to most RCICs that register with IMMC3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do see it working in like two different ways. So number one is that I see a lot of, when we're talking about junior RCICs, so people who got their license within like last couple of years, a lot of times they are truly scared of taking a case because they just don't know, right? And they're stopping themselves from growing the business. And I always say that, look, just sell. Number one is just get the retainer. You'll figure out everything, or get the quote, approved by the client. You figure out everything. I'll help you to figure it out. And when I say I help you, I usually direct to you guys, because I know that person will not just only get the client that they need, they get their momentum in their business. They feel like, okay, like I'm doing something, it's working, I'm growing, right? And then they get support from you guys to maintain that momentum, to deliver good results to clients. They get, knock on wood, approved for the case, and they feel like, okay, that's great. Like now the second case I can do myself, or that's with less involvement.
Less involvement, and that's the whole thing. We want you to wean yourself off IMMC3. The point here is for you to be able to do the first ones with confidence and competence. And if you can do that, the first few like that, it's great. Then you don't need it, and then you become a co-counsel on the system, and you are now going to be helping others to do it. So from that perspective, I think it's a good model. It works. Beyond that, really, that's all we want to make happen here.
For sure. And for the second way that I can really see how it can benefit RCICs, regardless whether they're junior or not, is because things are changing in immigration. If you used to specialize in study permits, probably your number one thing on a to-do list today is to pivot your business, because study permits are not the best thing in the world right now. So when we are all figuring out how to pivot our businesses, especially in B2C world, discovering those lucrative areas and pivoting to those lucrative areas, that's where you can use IMMC3 to get that competent support, so you can decide whether that's the path to take your business into. I do have a lot of RCICs, like my friends, my mentees, who are deciding to pivot their business into IRB work. I do have RCICs who are pivoting their business into different provincial nominee programs than they're normally doing, right? So there are a lot of things that going on, and we are actually planning to hold a webinar with Phil, Mohammed, and I don't know about yourself, but hopefully
I would love to participate.
Yes.
For sure.
And the topic would be about that, about actually how to pivot your business in these times when immigration policies are changing, where to find those pockets and how to actually pivot to those pockets with the help of IMMC3. Because, I've frankly never done any other PNP program other than Ontario, right? Yeah. But I know that there are right now PNP programs like Newfoundland right now is a little pot of gold that I would love to pivot, but I'm scared. Like I don't have, I cannot train my staff on it. I don't know myself what I'm doing, right? So I would love to get that support. And so guys, you will see the link to IMMC3 website in the description below, in the episode description, and then a link to sign up for the webinar also will be posted there once we set everything up. So definitely very useful. So check it out. You can register for IMMC3 portal right on their website. I actually did register just last week for the portal, and check it out, and definitely good resource to have if you have that client that you don't know how to handle their case.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. That was the best plug I've heard ever.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Peter. It was so much fun. And I just love your passion for the business and for immigration. And it was amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Olena. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay. See you next time. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Bye-bye.